Hey, are you looking to buy or sell real estate? You've got questions, we've got answers. Welcome to the show, It's Gonna Be Great, featuring Matt and Jen from HomeTeam4u. And now, without a moment's notice, haste, I don't know.
Adieu.
Sure, it's Matt and Jen. Woo! I almost
Jacob.
nailed the intro.
Did not hit it.
Yeah, this is what happens when Matt makes fun of a do. Then every time he tries to do his
Can't say
intro, he can't say it. So.
Yeah, I can't say without further ado anymore.
Yeah, you're going to have to practice saying something different.
I miss that guy.
Yeah.
My friend Adu.
All right, well, welcome to the podcast. Today we have some folks in studio. So Roger Stotter's with us today.
Hi.
All right, what's going on, Roger? How are you hanging in after the holidays?
I am looking forward to a strong 2022. The demand is going to be phenomenal as it was last year. The supply hopefully will be increased from last year, so we'll have somewhat more orderly markets, but I'm not counting on it.
Yeah, all right. And Ben Wright is with us. Hey, Ben.
Hey, Jen, Matt, everybody. Hello.
How's it going for you? Did you have a good holiday and all that kind of good stuff?
We had a good holiday. Probably had a little bit too much holiday cheer.
Yeah?
Now I'm probably looking to go on a diet for 2022.
Yeah.
But other than that, everything was good. We had a good holiday. Family and friends got together, and it was real good.
Good. Well, are you guys ready to chat about the west side of Madison?
We sure are.
All right, Jacob, take it away.
All right, I'm going to lead today's discussion on the community spotlight, which is Madison's West Side. So first, let's start off with the basis. Can you guys talk about maybe a little bit about the history of the West Side of Madison? Actually, scratch that, rewind. Let's define what the West Side of Madison is for today's conversation. So what area are we talking about?
I would say we're probably talking about Park Street to the west.
Okay.
So about from the
kind of
Capitol
Isthmus
to the
west.
west.
Yeah,
Sure.
Yeah, you can define it various ways, but the capital of the west, Park Street to the west.
Perfect. All right, cool. So now that we have our parameters, what's the story of Madison's West Side?
The west side has always been the prestigious side of Madison. I've been a realtor in the city since the 1960s. When I started, there was a very strong division between the east side and the west side. The east side was very much a working class community. We had Oscar Mayer, which at one point had 3,500 people working there. We had the Gishold Machine Company. We had Madison Kip. All of the people who led these companies lived in Maple Bluff, and the rest of the east side was working class. And it was pretty prosperous, sold many houses to people who worked for Oscar Mayer, who worked for Gishold, who worked for Kip. They were making very decent money. The companies were prospering. So that's the history of the east side. The west side was always the preferred side of town, the in side of town. All of the major institutions of the community were on the west side, the university, the hospitals, so most of the professors, most of the people who led the university lived on the west side. The doctors lived on the west side. The west side had more expensive houses and was most towns have the inside and the not inside side of town, and the west side was definitely the prestige side of town. In more recent years, communities like Verona, Middleton, Wanakee, some of those prestigious people, leadership type people, have moved out to those communities. Mm-hmm. Back in the 60s, Verona and Wanakee and Cottage Grove and Oregon, and they were small towns, 2,000 to 3,000 people. Now they're at 10,000, 12,000, 15,000 people. Sun Prairie's at, 35,000 people. So a lot of people have moved out of the city of Madison and into these communities. But the west side remains the prestige side of town because that's where the university people are centered, and Madison is a university town.
Do you think some of the expansion, the people that you mentioned, the smaller towns from the east kind of corridor, possibly working on the west side now, I think that changed in the, when did the Beltline go through? Was that 70s, 80s? I wonder if that actually,
probably.
what if that actually grew those smaller towns to?
Yeah, that would have made a difference. Whether it was in the 70s or 80s, I can't remember off the top of my head.
I remember it, so I'm thinking it might have been the 80s.
80s.
But yeah, that was the ability to move back and forth was certainly enhanced dramatically by the Beltline.
Because I think that was originally just Broadway, and I don't remember if Broadway ended or where that went to. But yeah, at some point in that period of time, the Beltline was put through.
Yeah.
Cool. So let's stick on the topic of prestige for a minute, because when I think of the West Side, the most prestigious thing I can think of is Hilldale right now, which used to not be prestigious, but now it's some fancy smancy.
Oh, it was kind of prestigious. You had Marshall Fields
Marshall
over
Fields,
there.
yeah.
Marshall Fields was like the hoity-toity place to go.
I guess it depends on the decade.
So the 70s, both, I think we talked last week about the East Side Mall going in the 70s. West Side was also 1970s.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of the benchmark, I think, must have been when all the malls went in.
Yeah, West Town has always had higher priced merchandise than East Town Mall, and now I think the West Town Mall is much more prosperous than the East Town Mall at this point.
I think they're all going to get torn down.
We had talked about a little bit on the podcast. They're going to totally renovate East Side. They're going to tear down the whole mall, build a whole new, I don't know exactly what it is.
Commercial, probably residential, both, I would think.
Yeah, some sort of hybrid something. It feels like it's going to be another Hilldale.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah. But anyhow, I think Hilldale now is super fancy because it's got the Apple Store.
Oh, brother. I think there's an Apple Store on Williamson Street, right?
That's an Apple repair store.
Oh, same thing.
That's pretty much when we go to Apple, we're like, something's broken. It's not very often, but every now and again.
That's just a guy. That's a guy. It's just some guy that's really smart with computers.
Roger, based on your experience, how would you compare prices? If you were to say a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom house, 2,000 square feet on the east side versus that same house on the west side, overall prices, what % higher on the west side than the east side?
The west side comparable housing has always been more expensive, maybe 20% higher, something like that. I would say as an average over time.
Mm-hmm. And what you get out of that is then you get access to, the institutions you talked about, the hospital and the university, and
you can ride your bike downtown. All those kinds of things. Mm-hmm.
So is that pricing just adjusting for what people make on that side of town, the average income?
I guess
there's an advantage to it.
It's demand and supply, and the supply is a higher level of housing than is on the east side, and particularly the university supports it. Certainly, university people want to be
close to
the university, so and they're how many employees at the university? I guess there are 45,000 students, so there are a lot of employees.
25,000.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. All right. So let's talk about food. Do you guys got any recommendations for restaurants that you like on the west side of Madison? Anything comes to mind?
I have eaten several times at Oliva, which is a Mediterranean restaurant on the west side. I like Mediterranean food. They are only open in the evenings now. They aren't open for lunch because of the limited supply of help, but they are a very fine restaurant, and so I enjoy that.
You guys been to Louisiana's?
Yeah, not recently, but I've been
It's
there.
West Side.
Yeah, yeah, the Orleans
Yeah.
type.
Downstairs piano
yeah.
restaurant.
Yeah.
That sounds kind of neat.
Ooh, fancy. Where's that at?
It's on what's the name of the street? Hubbard. I think it's actually technically Middleton, but it's West Side.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of a. If you start getting into that Middleton area, West Side, Middleton, they kind of blend together.
Blend together, yeah.
There's some good spots over in like Greenway Station. I don't know if is that West Side? Is that Middleton?
I think that's Middleton, Greenway Station.
Okay, we'll save it for another podcast.
Yeah.
But I still count it.
I like Johnny's Steakhouse over there. That's pretty good.
Oh yeah. I think they have the same big box restaurants like the Olive Gardens and the Chili's.
Oh,
and,
sure. Yeah.
Portillo's, I think, is on the West Side. We talked about Portillo's on the East Side last week.
Okay.
So they must have an East and West location.
Yeah. They got, I mean, every major chain restaurant you can think of.
Yep.
You
Or
should
Chick-fil-A and Longhorn
Chick-fil-A.
Steakhouse.
He's making a new restaurant.
It's the vegetarian version.
Yeah.
Sleeves and sticks.
Dave and Buster's.
They got a Dave and Buster's. Yep, I've been there.
Yeah, we took the team there once.
Yeah, Melting Pot.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
They got the melting pot over
What do you
there.
keep- Vino?
Oh, yeah. We went there with the Start group.
I haven't been there. That sounds too fancy for me.
It's pretty fancy. I probably can't afford to go there.
Olive Garden.
It had a really great view of the Capitol. Not in the room we were in, but in another room. So fancy.
And if we get closer to downtown, then we can start talking about all kinds of stuff. But
Yeah.
I don't know when we're like central downtown versus west side. But
We're just going to do a central downtown.
we probably should do a central downtown episode.
So we can
Yeah,
talk about the
I
Capitol.
mean, we could talk food all day long down there.
Oh, yeah. I'm
Seems like the
getting
food
hungry.
portion of our podcast usually go longer than anything else.
Well, for good reason.
I'm hungry now.
I know.
I mean,
Ben's like,
we're-
I'm hungry.
Bonfire.
we gotta
Bonfire on the Beltline.
There's an actual fire, or
Bonfire.
No, that's the name of the restaurant.
Yes, yes.
is that the news?
Yeah.
I don't know that one.
Yeah, Bonfire's a nice restaurant.
Yeah.
You've never been to Bonfire?
I never even heard of it.
Really?
We,
you know the
somebody
Ford,
took
the
us
Ford
there
dealership?
once. It's right by the Kaiser.
Kaiser Ford. Hello?
Okay, I'm listening. I don't know.
You don't know where that is?
I know all those dealerships, like Fish Hatch,
Yeah.
Yeah. So keep taking the Furniture Road past Don's Oak, past...
Todd Drive.
No. It runs perpendicular.
It's like on the
probably.
bottom of one of those big, ginormous buildings that they built over there.
Oh, like that. Okay, I know what you're talking about.
Just say yes.
Yeah.
Yes, got it. Okay, I had breakfast at one of those places. The egg, what's it called?
Yeah.
Cracked egg or something. I don't know.
Yeah. I know what you're talking about. I've never eaten there. I've always kind of wondered what they had there.
They got eggs,
Eggs. All right.
eggs and pancakes. and
All these
whatnot.
restaurants start to blend towards downtown. It's like Cento and
Oh, Centos. That's really classy.
Lombarditos.
Yeah. All right. We won't
Hungry.
dwell on restaurants too long. But overall, the vibe I'm getting from West Side of Madison is if you're looking to live in Madison with fancy pants stuff,
Fancy pants.
we'll call Madison West Side the fancy pants side of Madison. That's where you're gonna be.
I think if you're, like Roger mentioned, the university, that's probably a good location, easy access to the university. Hospitals.
Yeah, fancy pants.
Fancy pants, okay.
Yeah.
Fancy pants. It's
Yeah.
the fancy
So the
pants.
medical people, many of them need to be
Yeah, that's right.
They have to
Close.
be within 20 minutes
Yeah,
because they're
yeah.
on call. So
Of
it's
the,
kind of like
of the
a
hospitals.
built-in area
Yeah.
right there. It's like, hey, we have to be within 20 minutes or 15 minutes because
That's
I
right.
might need to be in surgery in a half an hour, Wee. There's no stress there. I can understand.
All right, so let's talk about a new segment we're going to start on the show. It's going to be called, maybe we'll come up with a better name, but right now I'm just calling it real estate terminology. So
Yeah,
each
you gotta
week,
come up with a different name.
I know, but each week we're going to talk about a term and kind of break it down. Jen, do you have the term in front of you?
All right. The term for this podcast is as is. Would you like me to tell you about it? What we have for our notes here so far?
Should we let them just tell us what they think it is.
Let's read the definition, and then we can dissect if it's right, because I stole it from the internet.
So a property marketed in as-is condition usually indicates that a seller is unwilling to perform most, if not all, repairs. It could also mean that it is priced as is, which typically lower than market pricing in the area, is what this says.
The first definition is the only one I'm familiar with. People use that if sellers just say, I don't want to do any work on the property, and sometimes they stick to that and sometimes they don't. But people who are selling their houses oftentimes think if they say we're selling as is, that will preclude people from asking them to make repairs or lower the price based upon the inspection. It won't.
Yeah, that's something that people don't necessarily understand, that you can say that something is as is, but if people can still do an inspection, they can still ask. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't mean that all of that stuff is going to go away. And can it be detrimental to say that your house is as is? In some cases it might, because then people are like, well, what's wrong with it?
Right.
So you have to be careful when you use that as-is language, for sure.
I think in this market now, you may have the as-is. People understand a little bit better that it's priced. Going to the second definition.
Yeah, that second part about price, I would never have thought that was something. So I would say the internet wasn't right there. But
I got it wrong.
I charge you, internet. I say no.
So you don't think there's an implicit, this is cheaper, then it's lower. There's something like you're saying, there's something wrong with it because it's as is. Like, why would you say that unless there's something wrong with it, right?
Well, people think potentially that there's something wrong with it. I don't know that it comes through, at least in any market that I've ever worked in, that it was, more affordable. Because, I mean, you would hope, I think maybe some people think that they're going to get a deal if it's as is, and maybe that's what this is getting at. Mm-hmm. But in reality, then, nope. I don't think so.
Not in this market.
Well, not in any market I can think of.
Yeah. It basically just means the seller doesn't want to mess with it.
Yeah, the seller doesn't want to do anything. So if you are willing to take it as it is, I guess it might give somebody license to try and lowball and be like, okay, I will offer you a lower offer because you're as is and I won't make you fix anything.
As is certainly indicates that there's a likelihood that there's work that needs to be done on the property, because you would never put a property in top shape on the market and say we're selling this as is.
I've had people want to do that though before. And I'm like,
they just don't want to deal with any.
Yeah, they're just like, we don't want to do anything. We think we did all we're doing and we're done. And it's like, well, you're sending a really poor message, because now people think that, you've got something hiding somewhere.
Can you say as is in perfect condition?
Yeah. That's I've wanted to say stuff like that, or I've talked to people and been like, are you sure that you want to put that on there? Like.
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't really make sense, because if the house is in tip-top shape, why even, what else is there to, it will be as is.
Yeah, people are like, I just don't want to negotiate. I'm like, okay.
Certainly you get, as a buyer, you go out and look at a property and you say to yourself, what's wrong with this property that isn't evident to me? What's wrong with this property that isn't being disclosed by the seller? And that's always in your back of your mind. And if you put in the as-is provision, that just triggers that. Yeah, there's something wrong here. So you want to. It's probably not very useful.
Yeah, usually it's a seller that wants it before I would say we're putting that in there.
Yeah,
because I mean, people, whether it's as is or not, they're likely going to have an inspection. So they have the inspection, and you say as is, it's probably going to have the same outcome.
Yeah.
So why?
It might save you a step of like, the buyer's like, oh, I'm not going to ask for repairs. I just know I got to suck it up if I want this.
In some cases, maybe. But if it's something really major, they might just say, well, they're not even going to negotiate. We're out.
That should be disclosed in the condition report anyway.
Yeah, if it's that major league, it really should be on the condition report.
It's an aspirational expression by the seller.
All right, I'm gonna crop out everything and just that's the quote. It's just,
Deep.
yeah,
Deep.
it's deep and poignant. All right, I got some questions. I got some as-is questions for you. So, who's responsible for a home's condition if it changes after the offer was written? So it says it was as is. They write an offer, and then I don't know. There's a flood in the basement.
Was the offer written or accepted?
It was written.
But it wasn't accepted?
Let's say it was accepted.
Okay.
No, it was accepted.
Okay.
And now there's a flood in the basement after it was accepted. But it was written as is. So who is responsible there?
Still have the 15%. Or damage past a certain percentage that still they
I
can
mean,
get out of the offer.
the seller has to disclose if something happens to their property. Wisconsin isn't a buyer beware state. If things go catastrophically wrong in a property, you have to let the buyer know.
And then the buyer has the option of still backing out of the deal.
The only time that they would have to be able to back out of the deal is if, I believe it's more than 5% of the purchase prices in damages.
Yeah. Which if the basement's flooded, that's definitely probably more than 5%.
Yeah. So if it's like a mattress falls down a stairs and it, wrecks some drywall, that's not it. It has to be pretty catastrophic for it to, be in that dollar amount. But yeah, if it got above the 5% and the seller couldn't bring it back to its original condition or wouldn't bring it back to its original condition, then the buyer could get out. Mm-hmm. But otherwise, they need to, disclose it and talk about it and figure out what they're going to do. Because the seller, there's a newer clause in the offer to purchase where the seller has to maintain the property. So they have to maintain it. They can't just be like, oh, you bought it. I'm, turning off the heat and I'm not going to weed anything
But
and we're going to let it
pool.
go.
It's a nice clause.
No, it's a pool.
Yeah.
It's an indoor pool.
Did say as is,
Yeah.
as will be.
In some states where it's buyer beware, maybe you could do that, but not here. So,
Nice.
and if somebody tried to do it, I think it would be quite an outcry.
So basically, this real estate terminology segment is going to turn into what the internet thinks, and then we correct the internet.
Sorry, internet.
I like it.
Well, but the internet probably has real estate from all over.
Oh, yeah, it's
So if you have
generalized.
something that's more buyer beware, then maybe, but that's not here. Yep.
Cool. All right. Well, there's your internet correction of the day segment.
Editing internet by Jen.
I like it. Now I already made some graphics. Now I got to fix them. All right.
Sorry.
It's fine. I'd rather them be correct than wrong. All right. So the next thing that we're going to talk about today is 10 tips to sell your home in 2022. Jen, I'm gonna throw it back at you. If you want to read through each tip and then have the team kind of discuss why it's important.
You want me just to go one at a time, or you want me to do them all?
Let's do it one at a time so we have time to chat about them.
Mm-hmm. Okay, perfect. So number 1, depersonalize. What's another name for doing some depersonalizing
What would you do to
stuff?
depersonalize?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Ben.
Decluttering and depersonalizing the property before a sale. On the depersonalizing side, it would be if you've got family pictures put up, taking them down, just trying to make the rooms a little bit more neutral. When you do have a buyer that comes through, you want them looking at the house and its attributes, not necessarily the various personal pictures on the wall.
Well, the first 3 are depersonalize, minimize, and virtually
Kind of wrapped
stage
all
as a
those 3
thing.
up.
So they kind of are all in there.
Yeah, I think minimalize is a little different. I mean, depersonalize is part of it, but I think going back to Roger's thing about clutter,
Yeah.
I think a lot of times less is more, and people don't realize it. And I think it's hard to view a space when there's stuff everywhere in it, and you can't because
It kind of ties into the photos too. I mean, if you're focusing on what's there, you can't actually see the house, whether it's the pictures of the family or it's the clutter.
Yeah, less is more.
I'm not sure about number 4. What does that actually mean?
Whiten the walls. So that was back in the 90s when all the walls were like, well, they wanted all the walls white because they had still a lot of the color from previous. And if you had, you know, color on your walls, it was like, oh. So everybody, we'd be like, whiten your walls, whiten your walls. And then HGTV came out, and it was like,
brown the walls.
Woo! The walls are brown, and now the
Let's
walls
gray
are
the
all
walls.
maybe
gray.
neutralize the walls.
Yeah, so you want to neutralize the walls. So if you have a red wall and a purple wall and a chartreuse wall, you probably don't want all those.
What color is chartreuse?
I don't know, but you don't want it.
You don't want it. You don't want it. Mm-mm. And I mean, if you are looking at real estate pictures online and you're tap, and the first one has a lime green kitchen, I mean, you're going to be like, oh, probably. So it's neutralizing the colors.
Walls are okay though, depending on the color.
Yeah.
I listed a house once. Every wall was painted bright yellow.
Was it bright
Was
in there?
it so happy?
It was not real attractive.
Yeah, they say that when you paint you should paint your kitchen yellow because it's so happy
chance.
and it makes your kitchen.
Why do you want the kitchen happy?
Well, that's where your heart is, in the kitchen with your
That's where
family.
my stomach is.
I heard that a lot of serial killers grew up with yellow rooms.
What color are your rooms, Jacob?
Oh, you know. Oh boy.
Yeah.
Number 5, coming soon.
So I wrote that one.
Yeah, I was going to say that one.
I'm like, what are you talking about?
This is a HomeTeam4u special tip. And I think the reason why I wrote this one, you guys can talk about why we do the coming soon campaign, but I think a lot of people they rush to sell the house and they miss out on that coming soon stage where it's out there. People know it's about to be on the market and you can build that hype.
Here's where the marketing guy kicks in his.
Yeah, boy.
Marketing all the way.
Let you talk about that one then.
All right. Well, as somebody that does the coming soon campaign stuff, it's in today's market, it's an extreme seller's market. So usually you put your house up for sale, it's going to get sold. But a lot of times, the best thing to do is let it sit in that coming soon phase on Zillow and other websites. That gives you a tip for realtors and other buyers, and that builds a hype. So then the day it's actually on for sale, you now have a pack of hungry piranhas going after your house all at once, which may potentially start a bidding war, theoretically.
Drive up the price.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's right.
Leverage the offers.
Number
Higher price.
6, sell before you buy. Was that yours too?
What do you guys think about that one?
So what do you mean by that?
In today's market, you have a house and you want to buy another house, but it's hard to sometimes you don't have a choice. But if you put an offer on a house, but you still have your house to sell, your offer might get rejected for another offer that has no strings attached. So
maybe accept an offer before you buy or make an offer.
You need to have the capacity to get a bridge loan. In fact, you should have one in place so that you can make an offer that isn't subject to the sale of your house. But you don't necessarily. I don't think people want to sell their house and then start looking because it's competitive out there, and the bridge loan is a real good solution.
The cool thing about being a seller is that you are in control of the process. You don't have to sell your house. So if you are wanting to get out there and sort of test the waters, we can get the house on the market and then see how quickly we're getting offers. But in this market where it's a heavier seller's market, we have more leverage where we can say, the seller wants to make any offer subject to them finding suitable housing, or they want to be able to have 90 days to find something else. And then that would allow them, if they're not able to do the bridge loan, to be able to
Control their destiny.
control their destiny. And if people are like, you know what, I'm not doing that, they can say, well, fine, then I'm not selling to you. So it is a lot of work to get the house all ready and do all of that, and then ultimately be like, well, you know, nobody's willing to do what I want. But in this market, I think there's more and more people that are like, well, fine, you know what, you go find your house, you take 90 days, whatever you need, and, you know, we'll wait.
I think you'll find the people, the prices that they're getting for the homes now are sometimes willing to make 2 moves. Mm-hmm. Move into a short-term rental and store their stuff, and then eventually go out and find the house they like.
Yeah, buyers can make it worth it to the seller. They get way more than they think. And then, as a wise person once told me, the process changes perceptions. And all of a sudden, they're like, woo, I got 30,000 over. I can, you know, afford to go on a vacation for a month. And
That'd be phenomenal.
Yeah.
Just go.
Yeah.
Yeah, the tension between do you sell first and then buy, or do you try to buy and then sell, is one of the key intersections that realtors have to be skilled at maneuvering through. Mm-hmm. And so that's one reason why you want a skilled and experienced realtor to work that through for you.
Yeah, because if you can't get that bridge loan, like Raj said, getting the bridge loan, I mean, that's the easiest thing to do. But there is some risk with it, because could you end up with some double payment kind of things, or some stuff that's a little like, oh, well, if your house doesn't sell now, you know, what do you do? But in this market, I don't really foresee that happening. So bridge loan would be number one, and then the other options that I talked about, being able to leverage and negotiate.
Number 7, first offers aren't always the best offers. That's yours too, isn't it?
So if we went around and just asked, in your experience, so Ben, in like the offers that you've dealt with, in a lot of cases, have you noticed that the first offer was the best offer or not?
I'd say maybe 50% of the time, based on offers we've received in the past.
Mm-hmm. It's pretty good.
Yeah. What about you, Raj? Best offer, first one being the best.
I would say that generally the first offer is the best offer.
Mm-hmm. Okay. What do you think, Matt?
I think, like Raj said, it shortens the time on the market. If it's first offer is the best offer, that does shorten the time. So in theory, if the longer you're on the market, the lower the offer you'd get.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with Raj and Matt. In most cases, the first offer, especially if it's like way ahead, we're probably watching, and it may be the best offer. This market is a little bit different, because it tends to be your first offer, maybe 15 offers. So it's a little weird, but in a more normal market, usually a lot of times that first offer, somebody's been waiting and, you know, wanting this property.
This one's my favorite, number 8. Mm-hmm. Smell test.
Yeah,
that's yours too, isn't it?
They're all mine.
Some interesting tips. Smell test.
The smell test.
Yeah.
I got this one. I mean, we talk about this on the podcast a lot, but from firsthand experience, my wife, when we did that showing at that one house I won't talk about, it didn't pass the smell test. And I think there's a deep psychological thing of how a house smells, because you smell it before you see it. Mm-hmm. And if you don't like the smell, then it's really hard to get past that. If there's something
also
off.
the flip side too, that if there might be a smell in a house that reminds you of something in the past that you liked.
Mm-hmm.
Like
It could
Jen,
be.
For example, you can talk about that one.
Yeah. When we bought our first cabin, when we walked in, it smelled like my grandma Van Ralty's house. Like, I walked in and I was like, yep, this is it. This is the one. And turns out it was just the fact that it had a really, really, really old furnace. And that's basically what the
hot water heater.
It was an old furnace and an old water heater. So it was like old mechanicals and like how they kind of smelled. Mm-hmm. But I was like, oh, this smells so familiar. It smelled like my grandma's old house is what it was. But it just triggered that I was like, yep, this one.
Now, some smells like that are not really in the control of the seller.
Right.
But I think there are some smells that you should work on getting rid of. Some really obvious ones that I'm just going to let them out for you guys to mention, the obvious smells to get rid of?
Cat.
Thank you.
Ferret.
Yeah,
Ferret.
animal smell. Have you ever smelled ferret smell?
Oh yeah, I used to have 2.
Oh yeah, so it's cat times 10.
Yeah, just being a landlord, we had somebody who kept a couple of ferrets in a closet,
It's a basement.
all like locked up.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that closet! We had to rip the carpet out. It was not good. But yeah,
Not pellets past the smell test.
yeah, animal smell and like cigarette smell can
Cigarette.
be a real turnoff for people as well. So pretty much, if it's not like cookies and homey smells,
I think
Yeah.
sometimes the air fresheners are overwhelming. Candles
Yeah.
especially.
Yeah.
especially the more floral scent stuff. And a lot of people have allergies. So if you light a candle in every room and you have, everything smelling like flowers, people are like, whoa. But if you do something more like a clean linen smell and put that in the bedrooms or by the laundry, that smells clean to people. If you put cookie smell in the kitchen, that's like, oh, yummy cookie smell. But, having weird what are they called? Gardenia smell, like flower
Just making
smell.
stuff up.
Ugh. Yuck. Sorry, I don't like that smell.
What's your favorite smell, Ben?
Money.
I love money.
Smell of a fresh beer, I'd say.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. All right. Woohoo.
Moving on.
Number 9. First impression is the only impression, says the marketing guy.
That's right. That one I actually did not make up.
Really?
That one I yeah. But basically the concept of it is that that first initial reaction you see is your first impression, and it really sets the tone for how you feel. Whether you're going online and you're flipping through pictures super fast and you're looking at thousands of pictures a day, or you walk in that house and it smells like garbage, it's really hard to get over that first initial thing. It can be overcome, but putting in all the work to making it as presentable as possible can go a long way so that first impression really hits.
The classic statement is you only get one chance to make a good first impression, and that's very true in presenting yourself or presenting a property. The impression you get, the vibes you get initially are pretty much what sticks with you.
Yeah, and things like that. It just comes to my mind when you're showing property that may have a renter in it, where you can't really do a lot of the staging stuff, and people walk in and you've got a tenant that's still there lounging around. The beds aren't made. There's just stuff strewn around. You've got dishes in the sink. It doesn't give you that homey vibe. It's sort of like dirty, which isn't great.
I think, Jacob, you mentioned it, that I think when people are flipping through photos on the internet, you really do have probably about 15 seconds per listing to get their attention.
Or less.
Maybe.
Per
Yeah.
listing. So you have 50 pictures. It's going to take a while to get through all those pictures, too. But I think the first 10 are probably all you get through before you go to the next one.
When I used to do web design, they said you had 4 seconds to get their attention to land on a web page. If you could keep them for 4 seconds, you got them.
That's really bad.
Yeah, that was like 10 years
None of
ago.
us can keep attention to look at photos more than... Well, I think website's a little bit different than a look at photos.
It's similar though. Still got to click it. Yeah.
I think it's probably still really true.
Last one. Number 10, price correctly. Yes.
Does that matter at all, Raj?
That matters a great deal. Basically, properties don't sell because they're not priced properly. In a reasonably active market, which we normally have in south central Wisconsin, if you price your property correctly, it will sell. And if it doesn't sell, by definition, you probably haven't priced it correctly. It may be that it was marketed inadequately, maybe other problems, but if you factor in everything that should be factored into the price, it should sell. And it's a real messy place. Well, you have to drop the price. It's worth less.
So staging matters.
Mic drop.
Oh, but yeah, what I like to say is it's the marketing and the staging and then the pricing. And those are your big three. So if one of those three are off, that is probably why you're not selling. And in most cases, we do the staging because we hire stagers and we have them go out. And then our marketing plan, we know it works. So it does come down to price a lot of times.
Going back to your staging comment, I think that also ties in with getting the attention of people quicker. Because if it's staged and looks presentable like a Pottery Barn catalog, people are more tend to, I think, look at it longer.
Whoa, that was loud.
That was loud.
Sorry.
That was me.
Oh, I'm like, I just apologize. I assumed it was me.
So that
But
I had my beep
says
settings.
correctly.
definitely.
And I think there's also something to be said about pricing strategically too.
Definitely, you can try to compete for a listing, and the idea is to get the listing within reason, not to price correctly, because somebody else will overprice it and get the listing, and pretty soon the price will be where it belongs and the property will sell, and you will have been right, but you will be out
Doesn't
of luck.
matter.
Yes, that is true.
And of course, what the correct price is what we're looking for and what we're arguing about and negotiating about all the time, because we don't know what the correct price is.
It's only worth what somebody's willing to pay for it.
That's right.
Word.
Word.
Word. All right, Jen, do you want to put on your Princess Jen cap for this next segment?
All right.
Please
So
start with your dad.
if we have
He's very familiar with Princess Jen.
Princess Jen.
have you met her? She's awful, isn't she? Yeah.
He raised her.
Yeah.
He created her.
Good luck with this.
King Raj.
Yeah. All right. So
A lot of pressure.
now I totally want to give you one where you're going to have to say that you have to stage it.
Please do.
Okay. So let's say that you have a seller, and that seller has lived in their home for 30 years, and it is very 90s. It's kind of dated. So you have kind of a dated property, and to them it's not dated, so they don't feel it's dated. And then they do need to sell because they're going to be downsizing, but they have a neighbor, and that neighbor has tons and tons of junk. So you have a dated house and you have tons of junk next door. How would you handle that?
Well, if you've got a neighbor who is a slob, this is a real problem. As a realtor, I guess I would ask the people how they evaluated the neighbor, and it would be possible to ask the neighbor to clean up his place, which would be probably the realtor's job rather than to ask the seller to do it, because he and she have been living with it. But if it's a real junk pile next door, it can kill the sale. It just isn't going to sell. And maybe you even offer the neighbor some money or some assistance in getting rid of what is a real deal killer.
Have you ever had that in the past, Roger?
I'm sure I have, although I don't recall a specific incident, but there are certainly sales that are inhibited because the neighboring property is just run down and unattractive, and nobody wants to live next to it. It can be a real problem, because the neighbor whom you approach and say, "Can we maybe get this cleaned up?" may just say, "Go to hell,"
Which is probably likely.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. I actually had one of those situations, and it was a long, long time ago, so I don't remember the specifics, but I remember they had like this horrifically huge, messy boat, and there was all of this stuff like junked in the yard, but nobody actually lived at the house. They just kind of kept stuff there. So I was able to reach them and ask them if it was okay if I just picked up their yard and if they could get the boat out. And I don't remember if I had to offer them money to get the boat out, but they did move the boat and I cleaned up the yard. So sometimes
Full service.
you have to, but I mean, it was necessary because I mean, you pulled up and you were like, well, what's that thing over there? So
Having a neighbor who is a slob may be a motivating factor for the person who wants to sell. So,
In that case, staging probably does not matter.
So then you clean up their yard and you're like, you know what? I don't really want to move anymore. It's looking good.
But it didn't, the yard didn't bother the seller at all. They didn't care, and they just sort of thought it was a whatever thing. But when you're trying to get top dollar, it's like, okay, what can we do to make this? And I think on a couple of our first showings, I had gotten feedback about the house next door, and I thought, all right, let's fix this. So we did.
yeah, people who are buying certainly are concerned with the neighborhood, the immediate houses on either side and across the street, and the houses on the street. And I have often suggested to people that if they want to find out about the neighborhood and are seriously considering making an offer, ring a few doorbells and say, we're thinking of buying that house. Can you tell me how many kids live in the neighborhood? When the bus runs, da-da-da, I don't think anybody ever does it. But they should, because I don't know all of those answers for every house in town, and maybe some people have done that, and it at least gives them an option for quelling their concerns about the neighborhood.
Mm-hmm. All right, Ben, are you ready?
Lay it on me.
Okay. So you have a seller, and the seller of the property, they had been on previously with another agent, and they had their price very, very high, like higher than market value. And now they are jaded, but they have a opportunity to move out of state for a job. How do you go about helping them to get sold when they've had a bad experience before and been priced very, very high?
That's a good question. I guess, doing your homework and being familiar with other comparable properties and trying to kind of dial the seller back into the realm of reality as far as, maybe trying to paint the big picture, where their house sits in comparison with other similar properties, and then kind of maybe go through the explanation of when it comes to listing your property, there's a number of different strategies. There's the needle in the haystack approach, where you're trying to set an all-time, a record for a high sale. And oftentimes, like you mentioned, if you're priced on the high end of the spectrum, you might get a buyer, but the buyer might not have been born yet.
There's that.
Your house can sit on the property for a long time. And if the seller has experienced that, then they know what you're talking about. So, again, most people, when they do sell their property, they think it's a gold mine. And that always is a challenge to kind of try to dial people back into getting them within the norm of what's going to sell. And again, our goal as real estate agents is to try to help get people to where they want to go. So if they want to move and they have to sell, then they have to be realistic, and we'll certainly try to do whatever we can do to get them the best price. But again, it's I'd say doing the homework and trying to get them more comfortable with what is what other houses are selling for that are comparable.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
A really good way to get more realism from a seller is to send reports on showings. Mm-hmm. And I do that without fail. and the prospective buyer and their realtor will recite all of the deficiencies of the property, and I don't have to tell the seller about those. They're being told by people who are looking at the property, people who are showing the property, and it's just kind of a drip, drip, drip process. You know, the husband comes home at night and says, Gertrude, did the house showing go well yesterday? And she says, no, we got the report. They don't like it either. And this has an impact on motivation and pricing, which is certainly important in getting properties sold in most markets.
And Gertrude tells him to lower the price.
Gertrude says they didn't like it again.
That's
never gonna sell.
That's right.
I think Gertrude's the new trending baby name for this year.
Is it
Really?
It should be.
What?
It should be. That should
Yeah.
be the new old.
Gertie?
It's the one that's gonna sell
You're so
Ben's
full of
house.
Yeah, because it isn't born yet.
Yeah,
So it's not this year. It's
Oh,
future
it-
years.
Yeah.
Because
Gertie.
Gertie has not been born yet.
Oh, Gertie.
That's funny.
Gerd unit. All right. All right, we're going to wrap it up the same way we've been wrapping it up. I'm going to ask you guys each a question. In this, if you're going to sell, or if you had one piece of advice for a buyer and one piece of advice for a seller in the market this week, what is that piece of advice?
My advice to a buyer would be to make sure you get a skilled, experienced realtor, because it's a jungle out there. There will be other offers. There are various things you can do to compete and compete successfully, and you need a realtor who is skilled and experienced. For sellers, I just tell them, get on the market now. If you're going to sell your house within the next 5 years, 2022 is the year to do it.
Great.
I don't think I could. I just
say
echo
ditto?
Roger's comments. I think he hit the nail on the head.
See Roger.
Ditto.
All right, we'll take that. All right, you guys ready to wrap it up?
Yes, sir.
All right. Here it comes. Hey! Welcome to 2022. If you're looking to buy or sell real estate in South Central Wisconsin, visit www.HomeTeam4u.com. All right, I think that works.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
See you next time.
Jeez, Roger, you did so good. They're going to have you back here every week.
If you like content like this, consider watching some of these other videos, hitting the subscribe button. If you want to know what your house is currently worth, go to HomeTeam4u.com and look at the free evaluation tool.